everyone, welcome back to the Onigiri & Co podcast. Today I am recording an episode with a fellow Melbourneian pilot, Radar Kane. I hope I said that properly.
Yeah, you did.
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
It's good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Yeah,
Yeah?
things are happening at the moment for me. So, lots going on, and
Yes.
yeah, looking forward to this podcast actually.
Yeah, I'm really
So,
glad we managed to record tonight. I know we've
yeah,
tried in the past, and then I had issues with my internet connection, and then you did some traveling, I believe, and now you're
yeah,
back and we're together.
yeah,
So that's awesome.
yeah.
So my first question is always the same with guests on this podcast:
hmm
is if you could introduce yourself to the audience, who you are, where you're from, anything you feel like sharing with us today.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I guess you've said my name. My name's Radar Kane, and I live in Melbourne. I have a partner and three children,
Mhm.
and I work in the film industry, shooting TV commercials, feature films, TV dramas, um, and I've had a few businesses along the way, which is in conjunction with film. And I also am heavily involved with drones in the industry, in the film industry, with cameras. And now that FPV is kind of more mainstream, we're using FPV in film as well to capture whatever it is that we need to, whether it be, the bowling alley fly through to the, chasing cars and doing car commercials.
Yeah, which is fun bits, isn't it? Chasing
It
cars.
is very fun. Yeah.
I can see some drones actually in front of you right
Yeah.
now.
I'm actually sitting in a little studio at the moment that
Yeah.
shoots our live broadcast TV. So I've just kind of stolen a little corner
Mhm.
and I've got a desk and I brought some FPVs along just because, that's what we're talking about as well. And
Yeah.
that's what your podcast revolves
Yes.
around. So
You came prepared.
I
I
did.
like
I
it.
did.
Behind me, I never have anything relevant. I have books which have nothing to do with
Yeah.
FPV, and I have like a bass pedal, as you can see.
Yeah.
So completely useless. But my drones are packed in my bag.
Well,
My living
everyone,
room is a mess.
yeah. Yeah,
So
my house with three children is very chaotic sometimes.
fair enough. Well, since we're already talking a bit about drones and FPV, do you want to give us a quick background on you? Like, what's your background in terms
Yeah,
of RC, drones, aircraft, all these kind of things?
yeah. So I started flying remote control, I guess, planes, helicopters, about 12 years ago.
Mhm.
I got into that due to I had a bad back injury from board sports, so snowboarding, wakeboarding, and skateboarding, because that was my thing before I found drones, really.
Mhm.
And because I was kind of grounded and I couldn't get out and do any of those sports anymore, uh, I took to helicopters through finding out through a friend of mine, and it became an addiction basically. So I picked up the helicopter. I started off with little micro
Mhm.
helicopters. I think I got it from eBay. It was like $120, and I tried to fly it, and I had no knowledge about what mode one or mode two was. I just bought this product and it came as it was, which was mode two. Luckily, I feel, because mode two is the preferred drone controller, I guess, than mode
Mhm.
one. So I tried to fly it in my kitchen and I could barely get it off the ground, and I crashed it a few times, and I had to order parts from eBay, and I would wait like 1 or 2 weeks, and then I would try to repair it, thinking that I knew how to repair it. So I would and I'd try to fly it again, and it still wouldn't get off the ground. So I kind of put it in the bin, and my partner at the time said I was wasting my time and just to give it up, and so I did. And then it was kind of a number of years later, and it was a friend of mine at a barbecue, and he said he had bought a small remote control helicopter,
Mhm.
and I said, "Oh, I've been there, done that." And he goes, "No, no, you should check it out. It's pretty cool." So he showed me, and they had kind of progressed over the next 3 years since I had flown it last time. And basically, I was so addicted at the time when I had it, and I was in a good headspace, and I was at the shop at 9 o'clock the next morning buying this remote control helicopter. And
Mhm.
because it was much better, and it was it had newer technology in it, I pretty much hovered it straight away, whereas the old one I
Mm.
couldn't even really get it off the ground. And
Hmm.
it was a 6 channel helicopter, so it still required some skill, and it didn't have any kind of stabilization or anything
Hmm.
like we do today. And yeah, I just kind of got good at it in a quick period of time, and I just got really addicted to it. So I kind of, I went and bought something like 22 batteries because I was sick of like having to wait for them to charge before I could fly it again. And I would just fly for like 5 to 6 hours a day, and
Wow.
inside, uh, and yeah, I just got really good. And then because of my back injury, I was a carpenter at the time, so
Hmm.
I was like in and out of hurting my back and working, and I didn't kind of know what to do, and I wanted to get out of the industry that I was in because it was just not good for my back at the time.
Yeah.
And because I was flying helicopters, I was going to a store in Collingwood, close to the city,
Hmm.
that sold remote control helicopters. And the guy that owned the store, he offered me a job one day, and I thought, oh, this could be a really good break. I didn't. It wasn't something that I was like pursuing and wanted to
Hmm.
stick at. I just thought, you know what, I really enjoy helicopters, and maybe being in the store for a year could be a good
Yeah.
option. And I'll just get to play around with some stuff, and it's almost like a holiday.
Hmm.
So I did that, but then it was like 2 years later, and I'm still in the store.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and by this stage, I got many sponsors, so like motor sponsors and the helicopter frame sponsor,
Wow.
blades, servos, or like basically every different product that you put into a remote control helicopter, I had a sponsor for. So I was doing that quite intensively, and
Hmm.
just kind of flying around to different states, and we were doing demonstrations, and we were basically just there to sell the products that we were endorsing that was in the model.
Okay. Hmm.
And then
What can
as
I
the
ask?
yeah
Sorry to interrupt. What
no
size
no
were you flying by then, and what were the brands that you were using
oh
at
yeah,
the time?
so I started off with like a micro one. It was like a 120, which was only
Hmm.
like this big. And
Hmm.
then I stepped up to what they call a 450. So the size is roughly about so big.
Okay.
And then eventually what you wanted to end up with was like the big scale one, which was called a 700.
Hmm.
So it goes off the sizes of the blades. So each blade is 700 mil. So you get
Hmm.
like, I think the rotor disc is like 1440. So it
Wow.
gets pretty big. And so yeah, eventually I ended up with 700 size helicopters, but I also just had an array of different sizes and they all fly a little bit differently, and they're all a little bit different in how they perform. So like, the small
Hmm.
one was good for going to the park across the road and just, getting it out and having a bit of a rip. And that was a
Yeah.
bit of fun. And they're also pretty dangerous in regards to like public and other people because they move really
Yes.
fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just as
It's
FPVs are. So
but for some reason it's more terrifying to me. I saw one
oh
in real life one day, which is probably the equivalent of 700, the one you talked
yeah.
about. Oh my god, the way they behave in space, it's instant, it's suddenly
Yeah.
they're up and they go to left to right, and you're like, oh my god, if these
Yeah.
things hit the ground,
Oh,
you don't want that to
that's
happen.
it. They're dead. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, the price difference too in like breaking one of these as opposed to
Mm,
breaking a helicopter is like, it's not even the same. So like, you can just tip your helicopter over, and if you basically blades will go straight away, and they're like $220 for a set. So
yes.
that's it.
Terrible.
And then yeah, it's crazy. So a crash can cost you anywhere between $300 to $1,000 as a crash.
Mm, yeah, that's
But
awful.
yeah, it is. So it gets quite expensive, and I guess once I became sponsored, it took that fear away from me about having to spend the money, and it enabled me to perform tricks instead of doing them, up in the sky 20 meters. I could
Mm,
bring them right down in front of me on the
yeah,
ground. Yeah. So that
yeah,
excelled me basically by becoming sponsored because I didn't have to pay for any of my parts anymore.
yeah. And so, sorry, because I interrupted you initially. Do you
Yeah.
remember what kind of brands were your sponsors at the
So
time?
the first sponsor I had was a company that was uh, becoming big in America, which was a company called Outrage.
Hmm.
And they made quite a lot of helicopters at the time. And I guess when when that was happening and I was in it at that period, that's when remote control helicopters were kind of at their height. And now they're kind of like a bit more underground. The cost of them has gone extremely high, and there's far less brands around because they didn't make any money, and they kind of just dropped off basically
Mm.
because it was just one of those dying hobbies that was like, it didn't get promotion like drones do. You
Mm.
had to really dig and find out about where people were flying and how you got involved, and it was a really big learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, then I guess the other sponsors were, there was a brand called Scorpion, which was they make motors,
Mm-hmm.
and the other brand, the servos that go into the helicopters, which is basically what controls the blades and the throttle and things like that. If you're using, because I actually flew both petrol and electric,
Oh, okay.
uh, so the servos were MKS is a brand,
Yeah.
and what else did I have? Blades at one point I had Edge was a brand,
Mm-hmm.
and then that changed over time. And that was the main three was the servos, the blades, and the frame itself, which was Outrage.
Yeah, I was asking because when I moved to Melbourne, my first job was selling FPV drones. We opened a
Oh,
FPV counter at Hearns Hobbies on the Flinders
yeah,
Street in Melbourne, and but unfortunately, FPV was the niche, like more than
yeah,
even helicopters, and so I had to learn like literally on the go about servos in helicopters and the brands and because
yeah,
people were like,
right,
oh, I need an MKS and then a number. And I was like, I don't know if that's a chassis, a frame. I don't know, and I had to
yeah,
pretend I knew. So I
yeah.
wanted to hear some brands. Yes.
Yeah, there's so
Yes.
many little bits and pieces, especially if you involve like remote control cars and things. It just gets crazy with the amount of brands that there are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I
Did you
couldn't
ever
even imagine.
Yeah, it was complicated, and then I sort of FPV started being a bit bigger. Like people heard that
Yeah,
we were selling stuff in store, which is a real trap for FPV addicts because if you
yeah,
come in store and you see the product in real life, you're sure you buy it.
yeah. You're gonna buy it for sure. I'm actually
Yes.
surprised there's not more stores that have FPV like on hand where you can come in and have a look and talk to somebody. And
Yeah.
I think if there was that shop, I think it'd be pretty busy.
It was going really well for us. We were growing and we were organizing events and stuff. And then I
Mm,
left, so this is my
yeah,
fault. But it was doing well while it was there. The shop was yeah, it was fun to meet other pilots. Since then, I've
yeah. It
kept
really
contact
is.
with pilots. Yeah,
Yeah,
and the only in-store, like the walk-in one that I know of in Australia, is Mantis FPV. It's in New
yeah.
South Wales or Queensland. I
Yeah,
forgot
okay.
now.
I do
Yeah.
purchase a bit of stuff from there, and they also
Hmm.
do a lot of 3D printing products.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I buy a
And
lot of my printing stuff from there.
yeah, and they're lovely. And again, I had one of the co-founder on the podcast, and he
Yeah,
said the walk-in store is definitely a trap. I mean, in
yeah,
a good way, in a good way. But you're sure you're
yeah,
gonna buy something.
yeah. That's awesome. I think with the with the web being there and more people are online these days, and then with things like COVID shutting people down and stuff like that, more people are just more online, and it's just
Hmm.
there's less costs involved in setting up a store than just having it online
Yeah.
versus a walk-in shop, yeah, bricks and
Hmm.
mortar. So yeah, it's costly to have products sitting on the shelf, and
Definitely, and the infrastructure and everything. Sometimes it's different to have a
yeah,
store than like just a storage, not unit, but storage facility.
mm,
But it depends which angle you want to. It depends really because I feel like since there are less walk-in stores, having a face that people can relate to, that they
mm.
can talk about, like I think it's definitely an advantage. I told you
Yeah,
there
it's
would be
an
tangents on the podcast.
yeah, yeah. I think it's a big attraction, and like I've contemplated, like oh, I wouldn't mind having a store FPV and something that you can walk into. I guess the other
Mhm.
one that I just come to mind, like XM2, have a small range
Yeah.
of FPVs in Oakley. I
Hmm.
buy a little bit of product from there, and yeah, it's really hard to find product. One thing that really frustrates me from buying product online is like, oh, I always want like a bunch of things. I never just want to buy one product. So
Yeah.
I'll go to that store online, and I might find two or three items that they have in stock, but then they
Mm.
don't have the fourth or the fifth one, and I'm like, oh, I really just want to purchase it all from the one place. And I
Yeah.
guess it's really hard for the stores to have every single product that you need, and then you end up having to, do three or four different purchases from different companies in order to get
Yeah.
all the bits that you're after.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Mm.
true. Whereas we need a cold for FPV
Yeah.
FPV pads.
Could you imagine walking into a shop where there's just like aisles and shelves of like, I don't think I'd have any money left after being in a store like that.
Same.
Yeah.
So yeah, you were selling RC parts. You were sponsored
Yeah.
pilot, and then
Yep.
what happened?
So the store that I was in, and I did mention XM2, at the time they were called Arc RC. And
Hmm.
yeah, things were kind of going down a path where a lot of people were kind of leaving the helicopter world and that industry in Australia, and it was slowing down slightly. And it was kind of, there was this guy that came into the store. I won't mention names and things here because it's all rivalry, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, a guy came into the store that he had started basically an aerial company, because at the time drones weren't even a thing. So the Phantom hadn't been released yet, the DJI Phantom,
Mm. Hmm.
and he was putting remote control helicopters in the air and having makeshift gimbals that hung out the front of the
Mm.
helicopter with like DSLR stuff. It
Wow.
was kind of like when the Canon started shooting video,
Hmm.
and he was trying to get a contract with Channel 7 to start shooting news and the current affairs type
Oh yeah.
shows with that product. And the, my friend that owned the store, he was starting to get involved with this guy, and we started kind of helping him put together helicopters that could do this. And it wasn't really that long once we had started engaging with him that the Phantom came out.
Mm.
And once the Phantom was out, that kind of started changing things, and it quickly evolved very quickly. I remember with DJI, and it wasn't long after that. And then they had what was called the S600, I think it was, and
Hmm.
it had six arms, six rotors. They kind of all like folded out, and it was a pretty big hexacopter. So
Hmm.
it had the legs that went up, and it had a purpose gimbal that held, I think it was a GH3
Hmm.
Panasonic or something like that. And then once that was released, that really was a game changer for drones in the film industry. And
Yeah.
it started to escalate from there, and more and more people were starting to get into it and buy these products. Um, that's when the store Arc started becoming XM2, basically.
Mm. Okay.
And I won't tell the full story. It goes for quite a while, but like I ended up leaving the store. I went
Hmm.
back to carpentry for a little bit of time, and another person that had been involved with XM2 had left, and it must have been about 3 months or so down the track. He approached me and asked
Hmm.
me, he goes, "Oh, I'm starting up a drone company, and would you like to be my pilot?" And at the time, I was kind of like, I would love to like do it, but I also was a bit skeptical about, is this really like a career path, or is it just for a bit of
Mm.
fun?
Yeah.
That, and the money that was being offered was quite high, and so I said, yeah, definitely, for sure, like I would love to do this, and it excited me at the time. And then I kind of committed to doing it. I was still doing carpentry at the time, so I was kind of
Hmm.
like, I wasn't working for them full time. It was more of a like, when there's a job, I'll do it, and when I'm not, flying drones for you, I'm doing carpentry over here.
Yeah.
And that quickly evolved and changed, and things got really out of control where I was like doing 2 or 3 days a week of flying drones. And then the boss that I was working for was like, "What are you doing? You're like never here." And he basically
Yeah.
sat me down and he said, "You're going to have to choose one or the other. I can't have you not here for half the
Mm.
week." And
Yeah.
it was a pretty easy choice for me at the time. I was like, I wasn't having fun doing the carpentry and my back was playing up. And I just
Hmm.
said, I 100% committed to doing the drone stuff. And that's when I kind of became a full time drone pilot within the film industry. And I just continued to go from there. And
Hmm.
I think I was there for about 4 years,
Hmm.
helping get that business off the ground, and we established a lot of clients, and I did some really awesome jobs, and I got to see maybe like the whole of Australia within the first year.
Wow.
And drones in the film industry, there wasn't heaps of people doing it at a high end.
Hmm.
So we were traveling a lot back then. So like people in Sydney were like, well, there's no one here to do drones. So they would call us up and we would fly to Sydney or basically wherever we were needed to go. So I did all of the states. We went to Fiji. I think
Hmm.
the company that I was with, they shot some stuff in Iceland and New Zealand, and I didn't
Mm.
personally go to some of those places, but I went to a lot of the places in Australia, and I went to New Zealand, Fiji, to do a
Yeah.
TV drama.
Oh,
And
nice.
then, yeah, it was really cool, and I really started to like it. But it was funny because when I when we were first starting the business, I was excited about it, and we had bought this like heavy lift drone. And back then, you basically had to build them, and I had the
Hmm.
skill and the knowledge from helicopters and these things to be able to do that. And they were quite big, and we were trying to fly cinema cameras because the DJI stuff just wasn't big enough to hold like a red camera or an ARRI camera, which is a film camera basically.
Mm.
And so we would build these big drones. And then when we took it to the park, and I hadn't done a job at this stage, we were just like in the testing stage of the equipment and things. I put the drone up and we didn't have any subject to film. We were just on a football oval. And I found it really boring because it was like it just like flew around the sky. I couldn't like flip it upside down or do anything crazy with it. It had
Yeah.
GPS, so you could just like turn the GPS on and like have a conversation with someone. And I was just like, I don't know if I'm really into this. Like, I
Yeah.
think this could be pretty boring. But when we got our first job, it was a job indoors in an old, was like basically it was a bando where I ended up flying FPV, but it was for a commercial to promote a running event,
Hmm.
and they were doing some stuff with some talent and things inside this building. The building had no roof and stuff as well, so but it was fairly open, and we had a fairly big drone in there. And it was funny because it wasn't until someone said to me, "You have to do this particular move and chase this person through here," where
Hmm.
things got exciting for me. And it was all of a sudden now I have something that I have to achieve, and
Yes.
that became like the thrill of like now I can put to work what I've been doing and like chase someone, and I had to do it how they wanted it to be done. So if I wasn't high enough or fast enough or close enough, then the
Mm.
director or the cinematographer would be like, "Oh, can you just do it like this?" And then it was trying to like please those people and get it exactly how they wanted it. And that was
Yeah.
like the exciting part for me, and it was really cool. And then things just progressed, and we all of a sudden we started chasing cars, and we became the company to come to, like for any car commercial. And then all of a sudden we were chasing all these cars, and we just had every week it ended up being there was another car commercial and another car commercial, and
Wow.
then it was just heaps of fun. And I just like now I'm like in this industry going, I will never ever leave, because it's just like I never feel like I'm working
Yeah.
until I actually have to write an invoice, and then I'm like, oh damn, I got to do some paperwork.
That's when you're
So
reminded. This
yeah,
and
yeah.
tax purpose. Yeah, so we just talked about your own company with your dad. Was that the company I actually met you through after?
Yeah, so that's when we first met.
Yeah.
That's recently come to an end,
Hmm.
but so I've just started a new company,
Yes.
and I'm more solo now. So
Okay.
previously we were called Harpy
Hmm.
Film Services, and yeah, we had a pretty good impact into the industry, and people really liked what we did, and
Hmm.
it was, we had some awesome adventures together. The company was actually between me, my dad, and my brother.
Hmm.
And my brother is an amazing cinematographer and director. So he kind of brought a different level of, uh, you know, things to the business that we didn't have before he was there. So he also came from graphic design and that kind of environment.
Hmm.
And then he switched over to filming and you know camera capture and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
he's responsible for all of the logos and things that we had and the branding and
Oh,
stuff, which was really
nice.
cool.
Yeah, it looked good.
So, oh, thank you. Yeah, awesome. And then that kind of came to an end about a month ago now.
Mm-hmm.
So just due to the industry where it's at, there's advertising and marketing's really suffered coming out of COVID, and there's also issues now with film and TV drama and stuff with the writers' strike in America
Oh,
and
true.
all of the things that are playing a part of that. So it's bouncing back now, but it's really slow.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely, I can see there's the improvement, and it's it's on its way back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, we're kind of at different parts of our lives, really. I have a family
Yeah.
with kids. My dad's kind of been retired before,
Yeah,
and
he wants to go back to it.
wants to go back to that.
Yeah.
And my brother is on his own path of looking to become, doing more directing and so forth, which is more of a solo kind of position.
True.
So and then I just had some of my own personal things as well. So that was kind of the reason that we kind of, closed the doors. And
Yeah.
I'm still doing all of the same things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've got some like personal little ventures and things like that, which didn't align with having the family business. But now that I'm more on a single path, it suits now. So
That's good.
looking forward to some of those opportunities, which I didn't have before.
Yeah. So, what are your next projects or goals or anything
Yeah.
like that?
So I'm working on a current project with a company called Moo Motion.
Mm-hmm.
They're like a production and like advertising company, and they're shooting a campaign for Kenworth trucks.
Oh, okay.
So that's been really cool because trucks are fun to shoot because they're, the subject's bigger.
Yeah.
And it's easier to kind of capture because they fill the frame more. But yeah, so we've been to Broken Hill already, which is one of my favorite filming locations because it's quite flat and it's very deserty, and it just has a really cool vibe. And the sunrises and sunsets are just very different there because of the flatness, and there's nothing obstructing the sun when it's coming up and going down. So and it's really dusty and things. So it's very, that's where Mad Max was shot.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks very much like that.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And so we used a little bit of, so we're using a heavy lift drone on that particular job with an RE Mini and some prime lenses. And so we captured some standard drone, and then I just brought along a 5-inch FPV just for a bit of fun.
Yeah.
Which once you kind of show people what they're capable of, like they might actually use it as well. So
that's true.
So that, and it's also to just show people what new kind of products there are, and new ways of capturing things, because a lot of the film industry still don't know about FPVs, or they don't understand where they fit in things, because it's a particular type of shot, because it's quite action packed as well. That's very fast moving. They're not like the standard drones where you got that real big cinema kind of look to it.
Yeah.
It's real fast pace. Then we went down to Lorne and we stayed down there and shot some stuff on the Great Ocean Road.
Okay.
And then we went into the Otways, which isn't far from there, into like some forestry, and we shot like a Kenworth truck, like pulling, logs out of a forestry.
Nice.
And then I have one more day, which is tomorrow on a Saturday, which is like the end scene to the whole piece, and it's like a 50th birthday celebration at a trucking yard.
Oh, nice.
And it's almost a bit of a drama piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And then it's been a really fun shoot, and the guys from Moo Motion have been really fun to work with, and I've never worked with them before. So it's always good meeting new crew and new people, and because you end up, especially on a shoot that goes for multiple days, you end up establishing like a really good relationship with those people.
Yeah.
And it's just like, there's just more to come after that usually if you do a good job.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What about the bear? Can we talk about the bear?
The bear. We can talk about the bear. So that's my
go on.
that's my new company. So my old company was Harpy, and this company is called The Bear. And I was actually surprised that I could register that name, actually.
Yeah.
especially with the new TV series that's out as well. And
Yeah.
I wasn't even aware of the series when I named it, and it all kind of happened at the same time.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's kind of the new business name, the new model, and it kind of goes down the path of where Harpy kind of left off, but also I've got some personal projects and things that I'm trying to kind of fit into that,
Mhm.
that I would like to get off the ground, which I always had in the background when I had Harpy, but Harpy was such a bigger uh, business, I guess, with like where it needed to be and how it was ran. And we had a big studio and we had
Mhm.
lots of equipment, and there was just no time. Like, even though when you were kind of quiet and you didn't have shoots on, there was always stuff to get done, and you were almost behind in your paperwork and things. So then you're always like looking for the next job.
Mhm.
Whereas now that I'm in the position that I am, I'm working from home. I don't have all the overheads,
Mhm.
and I have a little bit more time now that I'm kind of getting some work coming through, and I'm looking forward to, like, putting some money aside and picking my first project that I want to, chase and go, all right, this is something I've wanted to do for such a long time, and now I have a little bit of time and the opportunity to get it off the ground.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, I guess with some of those projects, some of them are documentary based pieces that I want to put together and get some funding for through the avenues that you do in the film industry.
Mhm.
I won't get into all of the nitty gritty stuff because it could be boring to people, but because there's a lot of paperwork when it comes to trying to get funding
Mhm.
and those types of things. And then, yeah, try and, once it's kind of into a shooting stage and phase, then shooting some kind of pilot for it, and then taking it to market, basically, where you can then get some backing and some more funding in order to, if it's like a 3 to 6 part series, then we can get some more funding to actually shoot the whole series and then sell it to a streaming platform like Netflix or Stan.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So that's part of that's like my end goal, really, is to get to that stage where I'm not so much shooting anymore, but like producing my own content and my own work that I've kind of put my heart and soul into, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. That was
Yeah.
my next question. So it sounds like you want to produce more and have people doing the actual drone and camera work now for you, if possible.
Yeah, basically, I really enjoy like being on set, and when I had Harpy, we did kind of like production manage pieces,
Mhm.
so car commercials and things. So for people that are listening, so um, I was never a production company where we produced the entire shoot. We just provided particular services for a production to
Mhm.
happen. So we would provide, one, the drone. That's why we're here, and that's why you're probably interviewing me, because I'm a drone person.
Yeah.
And then we shot ground cameras and tracking vehicles and other bits and pieces. So we specialized in anything where the camera was moving.
Yeah.
And in some cases, I would be in charge of, say, 15 to 16 crew that was ours,
Mhm.
whatever they may be doing, and making sure that they're moving on set and getting everything done. And I really enjoyed that process of like managing the crew and, like, prepping the tracking vehicle for when the drone crew comes in to then swap over into it and get back out there so that they could get their job done
Mhm.
well. And so I've kind of, with my solo stuff with the Bear, I'm trying to pursue first AD work. So the first AD is the person that conducts the entire day. They're the
Mhm.
person that kind of call like action and cut, and
Yeah.
they're making all of the components fit together and making sure that the day runs smoothly and on time.
Mhm.
It's a very big position and big role, so it's like there's a lot of stepping stones, and it's a big learning curve for me.
Yeah. But it's
So I'm
exciting.
really excited to do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
and I always enjoy the process of learning something new,
yeah.
and because I get bored really easy, and I can't do the same thing over and over, and I think that's why the film industry is suited to me, because it's always different.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
a colleague of mine at my work comes from a cinema industry background. He's done lots of
Yeah,
jobs in there. Like he was cleaning lenses, he was backing up data, he was the data runner. But
yeah,
he's done a lot of things around Melbourne. And now we are also interested, because he definitely has a director mindset. He has a short
mm.
movie out, sci-fi. If you like it,
Yeah.
it's Mars. It's
Oh,
amazing.
awesome.
And so we were thinking, oh my God, he really likes doing that. We have lots of skills within our company, and it would be nice to also start producing things. So recently we've done our first
Yeah,
baby steps with a project that we got almost given at the right time when we were starting having
yeah,
ideas. We got someone asking us this, and so I've learned. I was on the clapping, on
yeah. Awesome.
the, and I learned new things too. And I'm like, oh my God, there's so many aspects of videography when you start producing your own stuff that
Yeah,
it's not that I had no idea, but I had little idea. So
yeah,
it's awesome. It's been awesome. I was able to fly the drone as well, and my colleague was directing the shot, and I was like, I love this. I love having, like you said,
yeah.
a purpose, because a usual job is amazing. I really like it. But it's a lot of go on a site, on a work site, and record
Mm.
what's happening. So there's no planning. You put the drone up. You're like, oh yeah, there's this excavator doing this there. I'm going to film him for a while.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of progress shoot, which is very challenging because nothing is planned, so you have to decide on the go what you're going to film, and you have to
Mm.
make it look good. But when you have a storyboard, and you have someone looking over your shoulder, and he's like, yeah, I want you to start on the sky, and I want you to start panning down, and it's completely different. It's a lot of
It
reward.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever done a job that's so rewarding.
Mm.
Um, like coming from carpentry, like I never had the boss coming over and saying, "Oh, that was that frame that you just put up is amazing, well done." And maybe I would have got like a little pat on the back and said, "Oh, good job, guys," but that was about it. But
Yeah.
yeah, being on a film set, like I've had directors like running up to me screaming, going, "That was amazing!" And high fiving and hugging me, and that actually happens quite often on a set where like everyone's there for the same reason, and you're trying to capture something and tell this story, and when it happens and it all comes together, everyone's excited.
Oh, sorry, I lost you for a second.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I lost you.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, so I'll go back to that. But yeah, so when you're working together on a film set and everyone's collaborating and working towards the same thing,
Mhm.
when it happens and it all comes together, and that awesome shot happens that people were like expecting to happen, like they've written it in the storyboards and that's what they want it to look like, and then you can make it look like that, then everyone jumps up and down and is like high-fiving, and you know
Yeah.
it's a really cool feeling.
Yeah, it is. Um, that leads me to a question that I wanted to ask you earlier, and I just remembered. What do you have some favorite memories on film sets that when you look back, you're like, oh yeah, that was definitely one of my favorite moment.
um yeah, I have, like, I guess what makes it a favorite is like a number of things, and it's like I think whenever we've worked on a TV drama, it's because you end up working on something for a project that goes for like maybe 3 months,
Mhm.
and so you become really friendly with all the crew, and you become like a family almost, and you're working away and you're staying with people, and so it becomes that thing of like sometimes it might not necessarily be the shots that you're doing that's making it fun. It's actually just the whole environment.
Mhm.
So yeah, there was one that comes to mind is it was a TV show called Preacher, which is on Stan,
Mhm.
and it was a 6 series episode from America, and the sixth season was shot in Australia.
Mhm.
And the theme inside the film was actually that they were in Melbourne,
Mm.
so that was really cool. And it was when you shoot a TV drama, usually it takes around 3 months to complete a season. So the ending of that trip of the whole film, we ended up in Broken Hill, which is like one of my favorite places, as I said before,
Mhm.
and we actually got it was just a really small breakdown crew where we got a private plane, and we got chartered to Broken Hill, and we stayed there for 4 days, and we just smashed out all of these shots. And the reason that the shoot was fun was because there was a car that the main character drove, and everywhere she drove it, she like drifted it around corners, and it was a bit it was a bit Dukes of Hazzard. So basically, wherever the car went, we had to go and shoot it with the drone, and the car was in a lot of scenes. So yeah, we ended up going to Broken Hill and shooting out some stuff there, and it was a really cool trip, and that was probably one of my favorite memories I can remember.
Nice.
And then recently I went to Sicily, which was a really amazing trip. So that was one of my probably like visually and it being like a really big trip that went for almost 2 weeks. And I'd never been to Europe before.
Oh, okay.
And just so the way that it all just kind of planned out and worked, and it was because I got to they were hiring me for FPV and standard drone, and there was a lot of FPV, and we were chasing a paraglider.
Ooh.
That was jumping from. We had to hike and climb 7 volcanoes in 7 days.
Oh, wow.
and then we sailed to each island, which was amazing.
Yeah.
And it just put me in some really beautiful locations, and I got to see some cool stuff, and I got to FPV in places that people would never, even get to.
Yeah.
So that was a cool opportunity.
That's awesome. That's great you're talking about this, because I wanted to start talking a little bit about FPV towards the end of the episode. Yeah. So we just talked about your favorite moments in general, flying drones, doing imagery, but do you have a favorite thing about FPV?
Yeah, I think well, before I get into normal FPV, it's like since it's come into the film world, it's made it exciting again, like shooting drones.
Yeah.
So whereas like not that drones were boring, but it's just brought this element back to like being more free and creative and being able to like express yourself and do stuff that's like really exciting, like doing loops and flips and being able to fly in locations that you could not normally fly. I flew inside the Crown Casino the other day.
Oh, that's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, just in places like that. But yeah, FPV for me is like, I haven't been flying remote control helicopters for some time. My partner did try to get me back into it for a birthday. And,
that's nice.
She bought me some things to get them going again, and I had like a couple of flies, and I just haven't had the time. Whereas FPV, I have it in my backpack, and I can just kind of take it wherever I need to, and stop somewhere where I feel like is safe to fly, and just rip it out and have a fly. Whereas the helicopters, you have to like really plan for that day and prepare and go to the right location, and it just takes more effort and time. Whereas the FPV for me is it's like an escape for me. I just like, if I haven't had some time to myself, I just like to take my drones and go for a fly, and just find somewhere nice. And I can just like, if I find the right location, I can just chill out for a good amount of time.
Yeah.
And I'll play some music, and I'll just sit in between batteries sometimes, just chilling out, thinking about stuff, and I might write some things down. And then there's the element of like doing it with friends is something that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
So yeah, every now and then we organize like a little group, and we'll just, catch up, whether it be, through socials or phone calls, and just, we might get, 3 to 4 people, and we'll pick a location and just go meet up and have a fly. And it's also like a bit of a catch up too with people that I haven't spoke to for a little while.
Yeah.
And then, and I just love talking about drones and new products and, FPVs, and it's just heaps of fun. And then just learning from other people as well, who are, maybe be better freestyle pilots, or someone's a bit better with the technical aspect of knowing how something works, and just that learning phase again of like learning something new is something that I really enjoy.
Yeah, I really like watching other people fly. I do it a lot less than I used to, because I used to have more time, and I was a lot more in the industry of only FPV, not imagery in general. Yeah. And I found that when I had time to take time off and fly with new people, I would just watch them, for a session. So session could go up to
Yeah.
2 hours. And the next session I would do somewhere else with other people. I could find in my flying that it had picked up on some of the style of the person I had watched, and I'm like, oh, this gave me this idea to do this flick now,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very interesting how the brain works. And unfortunately now I have forgotten all of this and my flying has become a lot more basic.
Yeah, right.
But it's very enjoyable. I prefer flying with people a lot more than alone. But
Yep.
sometimes, because I travel a bit around Victoria and there's nice regional places like a lake or something like this, and if I have my drone with me, that's actually nice to fly on my own. But that's because the location is nice on its own. It's not
Yeah.
just a car park.
Yeah.
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 What is your preferred flying? What do you like to fly?
I like trees, and I shouldn't. I just really like I like proximity flying. So anything that is even a playground, but playground are for kids, so it's very rare to find a good playground not close to
Yeah, it is.
houses. And I just really like doing little hops. My flying is not fast, and it's not that many tricks. I just really like going as close as I can to obstacles and try to stay close to them, do an orbit or just a hop or go through things. That's really what I like the most.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. What do you do when you freestyle?
Yeah, I guess my favorite place to fly would be bandos, where it's like I like mechanical structures and buildings and things. I hate trees.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do play with trees sometimes if they're there, and I just find like every time I involve trees, I end up stuck in a tree.
Yeah.
And if I'm on my own, it's like the worst thing to happen.
Yes.
It's like when you got friends there and you get stuck in a tree, it's funny, and you can you've got backup and help in order to help you get your quad back. But when you're on your own, I just hate being stuck in a tree, and that's happened a number of times, and quite high too, where I've had to try and find something to get it out or throw things at it. Or I've never lost a drone in a tree, but I've come close to giving up and going, I'm gonna have to come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
I've came really close to losing one in Darwin. That was early in my journey. I was still running props in, so now I have props out, which helps a lot. Not getting stuck. And we had to call arborist, unfortunately, so they had to come.
Oh no!
Yeah. So
that's crazy.
So I think it was, but overall it was cheaper than the drone itself plus the GoPro. So I was like, let's just pay them. And in 5 minutes, maybe not 5. Let's say in 10 minutes they had it done. We had tried for 3 hours before that, so I'm like,
I guess they got the right tools, and that would be easy for them. They don't even have to chop the tree down.
No, not even. They just chopped the bit of the branch that we needed to, but they accessed it so easily. The guy just climbed the tree. I was like, maybe I should become an arborist as a job. And then I can just retrieve.
You might get some calls for FPVs.
Yes.
Can you get my FPV out of this tree?
Yes. But
that's so good.
The bando that you mentioned, I used to really like bandos. It's just that there's not that many around Melbourne, and also
it's really hard.
It's hard. And so I came close to a new spot I'm flying. It's a big park in Melton, and there's a basketball court, and that's close enough to me. It's not trees, and I can just go around fences, and I can follow lines on the ground, and I can go around the nets, and I'm like, that's plenty without getting stuck in. But my friend managed to get stuck in the fence, so we had to still poke the drone with some sticks from trees because he was stuck in the fence. But it's a great place. It's very nice. I really like it. Yeah.
I also like schools.
Oh, yes.
Are good.
Yes, I started in a school.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, in the Northern Territory, that's where I started flying FPV. And at the time, I was a cook for a school. And we were, me and my ex-partner, we were living in the school. So after school around 3:30, I would just have to tidy the kitchen while my batteries were charging. And then it was just flying in the empty school. It was the best.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, my first FPV experience wasn't very good. So, because I got into it late, like as far as FPVs go,
Mhm.
and my first, I think for my birthday, like my partner got everyone together and they all put in money, and I ended up. It was when like digital wasn't a thing yet, so it was analog that I bought, and I bought all of the components myself, and I had no experience in FPV and how Betaflight worked and
Mhm.
all of the stuff. So it was a big learning curve for me, but I managed to actually get it together and soldered everything, and I managed to make it all work. And I flew it maybe once or twice, um, very briefly to have a go. And then it was one day when one of our employees was over in the office, and I hadn't set up the OSD properly, and he helped me set it up. And then he was like, "Oh, let's go out and have a fly and show me what you can do." And I think this is only my third time flying,
Mhm.
and I still really hadn't done like acro yet.
Mhm.
I was still, flying, so it was leveling out.
Mhm.
And yeah, I went to we just walked down to the park at the end of the road from my house, and I plugged everything in. I just put the drone on the ground, and I flew off. And within about 10 meters, in my goggles, it looked like I was going to crash into a tree.
Oh.
So I just tried to throttle up, but it just wasn't responding to what I was seeing, and I
Mm.
just gave up, and I bailed out. And then when I took my goggles off and I started running over to where I thought it had crashed,
Mhm.
my friend said to me, like, "Where are you going?" Like, it almost went to the moon.
Ah.
And I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, "It just went straight up."
Oh
And I was like,
wow.
nah, it went over here, it went over here. And he's like, no, it didn't. So I followed him because he was actually looking at the drone,
Yeah.
and he said he was telling me where he thought it went, and we couldn't find it. And then I said to him, "Look, I know this is where it crashed in my goggles. Like, let's go over and have a look."
Mhm.
And when we got to where I thought it was, there was another guy sitting in the park flying FPV.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so you know what happened. I don't
Yeah.
have to explain it, but yeah, I basically, within about 10 seconds, I got his feed
Oh
in
god.
my goggles. So
Yes.
I thought what I was flying was my drone, but it was actually his.
Oh no, that's
So,
terrible.
and yeah, I couldn't even find the drone. It went so high and so far.
Oh
We just couldn't
really?
find it.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
And I just gave up.
Yeah. That's
um,
that can definitely happen. Yeah.
yeah.
Or if you have like a long range wing people. I used to fly at a park south of
Oh, yeah.
Melbourne, not too far from a long range wing club. And I was always scared. It never happened, but I was always worried that suddenly my goggles would see, the wings, and I'll be like, "What do I
Yeah.
do if this happened?" They were close enough for this to happen potentially, but far enough to not walk and ask them what channels they were on, which we should have done.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So I
Interesting.
had a break from there,
Yeah.
and it was like, they still weren't really used in the film industry yet.
Hmm.
Um, and it wasn't even that long ago that I got into FPV
Hmm.
properly, where basically it was iFlight that got me back into it, and DJI having their goggles, and it being a bit easier to, buy them off the shelf pre-built,
Yeah.
and, stick some goggles on, and see like a nice clean feed.
Yeah.
Uh, and it was kind of like when the bowling alley video came out,
Yes.
that was done. And that's when people were starting to ask us, as a company, like, can you do this?
Mm.
This is what we're after. And then that was when I invested into getting some cine whoops and bits and pieces. And then I went back down that rabbit hole again of like the learning process of like, digital goggles and all of the stuff. And I became more familiar with Betaflight, and I
Hmm.
started flying cine whoops first.
Yeah.
Uh, and trying to do that, and then it was kind of like I didn't have the skill set either at the time
Hmm.
to like complete jobs. So I was in contact with a whole bunch of people on socials, and a guy reached out to me by the name of Harrison Hibbs, who goes as Starfly FPV.
Hmm.
And yeah, we connected, and at the time we had micro whoops in the studio, and we used to set up racetracks in there and just have races with a couple of friends. And we just connected with Harrison over socials, and we just said to him to pop over one Friday, and he came over.
Yeah.
And then basically from that day on, he ended up working for us because he was like just an amazing pilot, and he had a whole heap of skills that, you know, and not just skills but knowledge about FPVs that kind of like brought Harpy into that FPV, you know, light basically. And yeah, he completed some awesome jobs while Harpy was together, and he ended up flying like a cine lifter with a Komodo and bits and pieces on there for us. And
Nice.
yeah, and now I'm kind of like, my skill set is kind of catching up, I guess. And yeah, that's another reason that I try to go out and fly just for fun as well, is just to kind of build up those skills and bits and pieces. So
Yeah. And yes,
I'm still learning.
yeah, but I feel like you can learn for a long time anyway with FPV. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, there's always something new.
yeah, there's always something new, and I actually enjoy watching like a bit of YouTube and socials of people's flying. I don't really fly sim, and only for the reason that I don't really have any computers that are kind of capable of, operating a sim properly. So I've given it a go, but it just doesn't feel very organic to me. It feels very unnatural.
It makes me
And
dizzy.
yeah,
Yeah.
it does as well. For
Yeah.
some reason, if I fly for real, though, I don't get that feeling.
No, same. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
I think it's just that fact of, the space and its reality, and
Yeah.
it just feels more real.
I get more sick flying DJI HD because of
Okay.
the delay.
The clarity. The delay.
Yeah, I think there's a slight delay, and even though in theory they said, oh, but it's in this amount of millisecond versus your analog camera, I'm like, yeah, I'm not trying to, be snobby or be different, but it literally physically makes me sick, and the only explanation I have is there's a delay. So when I actually when my brain expects something and it's not happening exactly how it expects, I get sick.
Yeah. And the longer you stay in that environment, it just makes you more sick.
Oh, it's awful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I've been sick before from FPV, more so on the sim than anything. But yeah, it's not a good feeling. And I can only fly for like maybe an hour.
Yeah.
And if I, off and on, and then if I start going beyond that, it gets a bit too much, and then I start to feel a bit off.
Yeah, with the DJI Avatar, which I actually like flying because on top of that there's some vibration because it's a Cinewhoop, so and we're not tuning it ourselves, we just fly it. Vibrations plus delay. I fly 3 batteries, and then I tell my colleague, you have to fly now, and I have to to watch on the screen.
Yeah, have a rest.
Well, that leads almost to the end of our podcast. I have heaps more questions to ask you, but I think we'll save that for a second episode.
Yeah, no worries. Happy to do.
Yeah, that would be really nice to have more even FPV talk, especially, I wanted to ask you about the future of FPV, but I think we can probably save that for the next episode.
Another episode. Yeah, sure.
So I would like to conclude this one. I usually ask my guest about advice that I can give the audience. So I had 2 questions for you on this. Is what kind of advice would you give to people who want to improve their flying skills? And what kind of advice would you give to anyone who wants to become a professional in the field of imagery?
Yeah, I guess, well, the imagery one I'll start with because that's what I know the best. But I think, one, be doing it already as a hobby. Like, Mavics are pretty affordable these days. So, obtain a Mavic and start going out and just shooting some landscapes and understanding how the drone works, and, jump on YouTube and start learning the processes of, exposures and things, because there's just so much information out there now that you can get. And that's if you don't know any of that stuff. A lot of people these days kind of have a small understanding of, how to capture an image.
Yeah.
But I guess it becomes down to, it depends on what kind of pilot you want to be. And if you want to become an elite type of pilot, well, then you really need to just spend the hours and the time in learning how to fly, basically, and becoming better. That would be for, how to get into the film world with drones. But for FPV, I guess for me, I already kind of had a little bit of that ability because I already did it with bigger drones. I just didn't put it through smaller holes because the drone was bigger. So I adapted to it quite easily.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were learning, I think flying the drone line of sight would help. Understanding how the drone flies, I think, is important, and a lot of people probably just chuck the goggles on and just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then just flying in like ADI mode and stuff to begin with, so that you can have less crashes. And I think that's what it's about, is like spending less time fixing and more time flying at the start to get that ability up. And although I don't fly a sim, I did with remote control helicopters, and it's very, very helpful. So like, get a good simulator and just put some hours into that. And I know a lot of people that did a lot of simulator time,
Mm-hmm.
and then they went to the real thing and they actually like did really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a good way to go. And then there's just so much YouTube stuff on there. I follow Slat FPV.
Mm-hmm.
He has some really good tutorials on how to flow, and they were really, really helpful for me. And I think anyone else that's getting into FPV could benefit from some of those types of videos.
Okay. That's really good advice, and I should definitely do personally more line of sight things.
Yeah.
Especially with FPV drones, that would be like a good training. It's small, so if you go in the distance, you're also trained to learn to see how the drone behaves in the distance, and so it's definitely a good advice. Even just to learn how the drone behaves. It's funny because when I taught friends to fly FPV from scratch, I would never tell them put the goggles on. Always try line of sight, which I've never done, but I was making them do it because I was like, this is what I'm missing. And now I'm not scared, but I just want to have fun. When I go on the field, put the goggles on, and then I forget that, yes, I should train. So I used to make them fly line of sight first because I was like, I never got to do it, so I'm forcing you to do it.
I think it's just good to see how the drone behaves and what it does.
Yes. Yeah.
And I guess another good thing to do, it's a more expensive way, but just owning like a DJI FPV or Avatar, where it has all of the safety features. So not going as hard with them, but just like, at least if you feel like you're going to have a crash or something, you've got that bail out button. And it works really well, and it returns to home, so you're less likely of losing the FPV. Or it is more expensive when you crash, but if you can be disciplined enough to not push the limits too far, then I think it's a good tool to learn on.
That's true. All right, well, thanks for this first episode together.
No worries. It was awesome.
I really had a good time. I think it's the longest episode I have recorded to this day.
I must have talked too much then.
Nah, it's great. I'm really glad we were able to make it happen, and we'll definitely do episode 2 of something else. I'm sure we'll have things to talk about.
I could talk for ages.
That's good. That's very good for podcasts. But I want to free you because I know you have a job tomorrow, because you told us earlier.
Yeah, thank you. I did.
So just to finish, if people want to have a look at what you're doing, where can they see it online? Like, what can they look for?
Yeah, I guess the Bear is very new, the Instagram page, but it is the Bear_film. So you can catch me on there. If you want to see like all of my other work where there's quite a lot to see, then you can go to Harpy Film on Instagram, and that's got like most of where all my work is based. I have a YouTube channel which is the Bear Film as well. It's not really propagated with anything, but I did have a podcast that you probably saw.
Yes.
When I was with Harpy, that was filmed inside a vehicle.
Yeah.
While traveling to and from set, and I'm definitely going to bring that back, and would love to have you on there as well.
Nice, that would be great.
So so that I'm really looking forward to getting that back up and running, but it's going to take some time before that happens.
No worries.
But check me out at the Bear.
Yeah, I will put some links in the podcast note as well. It should show. I never know if my podcast episode notes show on people's screen, but I'm hoping I'm hoping they do. So I will try. All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, Radar, and thanks everyone for listening and for watching. If you like this episode, feel free to share it with people who might be interested in the answers we've given, the knowledge we've shared. And if you liked it personally, personally, feel free to give us some ratings. We're on all podcast apps. We're on YouTube now. We are on video thanks to this camera. um, and yes, thanks for joining. I wish you some happy flying, and we will see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye.
Thanks, Noelle.